Okay, sorry for my tardiness tonight. I was running a little behind getting kids down and my computer system set up. I'm playing with some new mouse, new hardware, and was having fun getting things set up and configured. So, good evening, Tide. I never know how to trust my viewer count because it's showing me 0 right now, which clearly isn't completely right. So, um, tonight I was going to start off going through taking one of my sample apps. I'll grab the repo link here for anybody who wants to follow along. But I was going to go through and show upgrading this app over to the new 2.6.0 APIs and what that looks like and how much code it can theoretically save you. Now, I did technically cheat ahead of time, and I went through and tested this. So, spoiler alert, I know ahead of time that it should be working. Though I did push some changes, and we're going to try a new NuGet package. What could possibly go wrong with trying stuff with the latest and greatest? So there's the repo link for anybody who wants to actually follow along and look. Let me switch here. Okay, so let's dive here. And I will just fire this up and show off what this app does. So I initially wrote this as a proof of concept on the old 2.5x interface or API for what it takes to do custom theming. So a lot of this stuff is based heavily around what you see in the demo app. But you'll notice there's a couple interesting bits in that this is actually Ma apps in addition to the normal material design in XAML. So we've got the normal material design built-in palettes, at least as they were called in the 2.5.0. We've got light theme, dark theme. You can see our tab stuff there. But the interesting one are these final two themes that we've got down here. So you can see they've got special colors for their primary, mid, and light. The accent colors are a little odd. They change out here. And these two are both custom themes. And this is the area that was really painful on the old API. Going through and saying, oh, I want something beyond the normal built-in color schemes, and also I want to let my users toggle between my custom themes and the built-in themes was not necessarily trivial. And this whole app is sort of a testament to how complex it was. So I'm just going to walk through a little bit of this code, and then we're going to throw a lot of it away as we update to the new one. Writing this was kind of proof that I needed to jump in and actually do something about the API. So let's start with the XAML. That's probably the easier one. So it's a fairly simple layout. There is an items control, which is bound to the theme colors. This uses a theme color view model as its data template. And this data template is really just a fancy button with that ellipse and text box inside of it. So this kind of look that you see here. Obviously, I spent not a whole lot on the design of this, but got it just laying out as much as I needed to. And then down underneath, there is some color zones, because these are really easy to show off the color themes for the primary, mid, light, as well as the inverted colors. And then a tab control, because it's one of the Ma apps themes that styles and uses quite a few of the brushes, so it makes it easy to kind of just show off, especially with like the press color, the hover color, and all of that, going through and showing that off. The view model itself, it pulls from the old swatch provider. Not all of the swatches in the 2.5.0 actually have accent colors as well, so it limits itself down to just the swatches that actually have accents. And then goes and creates this theme object and puts that into a view model. So this theme object itself looks a lot like the old API in that it keeps a list of hues. It's got some indexes into that list as far as which one's the light, mid, and dark. And then it's also got a secondary accent hue. And then it has the ability to go through and generate a palette, which in the 2.5.0 interface was the effectively complete color theme. So every time you build up one of these little colors, it's building up one of these theme objects. And then those, in turn, are being shoved into a ViewModel, which just makes it a little easier to pull off a sample brush, which is what gets used to show off this color in the ellipse, as well as a name, and then obviously the theme that it needs to go through and do it. So, and these are pretty simple and straightforward setups. In general, I'd probably tell people avoid view models with brushes in them. I tend to advocate for not having view models reference anything inside of the system Windows namespace. Usually that's an indicator that you're mixing view code with your view models. So in general, normally what I would do is just expose up the color and then let a value converter convert between the color and brush. Because really, this view model only has the color. The fact that it's a solid color brush is an implementation detail of the view, and view models should be agnostic of your views. I tend to be more of an MVVM purist in that regard, but the most important thing is that your app ships. So whatever gets you to there quickest, and hopefully unit tested. So this is the whole app. There is this palette helper class that I ended up writing because part of the old 2.5.0 interface. Oh, cool. Remind me, Tide, once I get through this, I want to come back and look at that question because I think this may help a little bit with doing it. So on the Ma app side of things, this palette helper is deriving from the old palette helper because all of the Ma apps have a bunch of built-in brushes that need to get set in order for all of the Ma apps controls to actually have their color thing set, which is why I left this sort of tab control in here, just to make sure that things were actually propagating correctly. And you can also see some of the brushes in like the window theme or even this outline, or if you look really closely, there's kind of this glow around the outside of the window. So all of these usually come in from one of these brushes and just getting these set up correctly. Now, the goal of the 2.6.0 interface was to eliminate this mess so that you guys don't have to do this, because this, quite frankly, was rather painful once I started down the path to figure out what it was going to take to actually implement all of this. So with that in mind, where we're ultimately going is we're going to switch this app over to the 2.6.0 interface and delete a bunch of this code, because most of this shouldn't be necessary anymore. Tide, when you said you needed help with that in the color picker, what do you mean by that? Is that, were you referring to sort of the layout and how you create those theme objects, or was this more regarding the palette helper? A brush in the view model. Okay. Actually, if you want, we will go through, and I think by the end of this, I'll whack that brush and show you how I would end up doing it in this app, and that'll probably leave a better example. So, to start from here, we're going to jump into our NuGet references. And so this is what most apps probably look like today, is they're referencing the 2.5.0 or 2.5.1 interface. And so we are going to cheat, and I'm going to grab, so key part here is check the include pre-release, and I'm going to be looking for the latest CI build. So the 2.6.0 version 1560, I believe, is latest. And then my dependency behavior, I'm setting to highest. So it's going to ultimately grab the latest on both of these other ones as well. Actually, I think I can probably do both of these. So let's do updates, and we'll just jump over here and say update all the things here. And I don't want to grab, I need to look a little closer at what's in the 2.0 Ma app stuff, because I want to make sure that there's not necessarily theming bits that go into it. There might be, and I might just need to update some of our colors. So we do try to keep in sync when Ma apps puts out an update, trying to update our brushes and theming stuff. And hopefully with this new API, all we have to do is kick out an update to our Ma apps integration package, which is all this guy is right here. It's basically just the glue to go between Material Design and Ma apps. Let's kick all of these guys up. Caffeine is necessary today. Whew. Okay. So 260 interface, and let's just restart the app, because there should be the old 251 interface should work just fine with the new 260 packages. So if you're worried about backwards compatibility, you should be able to go through and update to the 260 release, and as long as you don't do anything else, your app should just work just fine. All the theming stuff should still work. So we're just going to fire this up and prove that that much is still there. So light theme, dark theme. Looks like I may have broken something in there. I might double check that to make sure that it's not completely broken. And then something here is something here. Oh, this is the theming stuff. Okay, so this sort of makes sense. So this guy in here is falling apart because he's trying to set a Ma apps brush that is no longer there. So let's look at doing this update, because some of this palette helper stuff you'll notice. So for example, this palette helper, the replace palette method is now marked as obsolete. So we're going to mark this guy as obsolete as well, just so I get warnings, and then we will deal with changing him out. So the first thing we want to do is go over to our app.xaml. So before we had to pull in for material design all of these dictionaries. And of these dictionaries, this one for defaults is still somewhat important. This guy brings in all of the default themes for all of the controls, which is what we need. But these three resource dictionaries down near the bottom are all around color theming. So we've got the light color theme that we're going to start with, deep purple as the primary color, and then lime as the accent color. So we don't need these resource dictionaries anymore. So these guys can go away. I'll just comment them for now. And instead what we have access to, and I believe bundled color theme, right? So that guy should squawk and go find it. What is it? Bundled color theme. I'm going to have to go look, aren't I? So real quick, let me grab my So let me get the web page open and bring this guy over here. So on the drop to upload my files. So back on the MaterialDesignInXaml repo, demo app, because I can't remember my own syntax, app.xaml. This guy here, bundled theme. I missed one. Ah, thank you. Kirko, I think is, if I'm saying that right. Bundled theme, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so this guy has a couple properties on him. Base theme, which is ultimately looking for light or dark. Oh, good to know. So there is technically an inherit property. This one is not currently being used. There is a theme assist class if you wanted to apply a different color theme at a subsection of your app that will use inherit. My plan is to, in a later release, add inherit if it's set at the root, to go out and pull from the, if you're on Windows 8 or Windows 10, pull the built-in theme to know if you're on light or dark and adjust accordingly. But currently, the only things that'll make any difference at the root level are light and dark. So primary color, we'll go with purple, or I'm sorry, deep purple. We should match what we were before. And then secondary color is lime. There is a somewhat, for anyone used to the terminology of accent color, there is an intent to switch this over to using secondary rather than accent. And I don't know why it is highlighting secondary. Did I typo something? Secondary color. Nope, should be fine. I think that's probably just ReSharper losing its mind. There is also a second option. So if you don't want to just do the Material Design, There is a second option rather than the bundled theme for custom color theme. Has the same type of thing for base theme, but then for the primary and secondary, you can just put in arbitrary colors. So any RGB color that you want. What this will do is it'll set the mid color for both primary and secondary, and then it'll jump up a couple lightness levels on the HSV color space and just automatically pick your light and dark versions. So for people who just want a quick and easy way and who don't necessarily like the built-in color themes and want to roll their own, this is a quick and easy way to do it. But for now, we're going to stick with this guy. So that gets that in there. That goes light and dark. But in our case, there's actually one other one that we care about. So this is bundled theme. There's custom colored theme, but there's also Ma apps bundled theme. And this is important if you're actually going to be using Ma apps with Material Design and the new API. So the only difference between this bundled theme and the other bundled theme is this one is going to do all of these brush setters that we did manually in our app. It's going to handle those for us. So then you no longer have to keep track of what are all the Ma app brushes that I need to set and how do those map to my Material Design theme colors. If you use the bundled theme out of the Ma apps library, it just pulls it in for you. So quick and easy, much simpler. I like better. So we're going to go with this route. The other resource dictionaries that you need for Ma apps, because these come out of their library, nothing I can do about those. And then, well, nothing that I should do about those, I'll put it that way. And then you also still need to pull in the defaults from the Material Design Ma apps, just like you did before, because this brings in the Material Design themes for each of them. So another question, so are all shades automatically calculated based on primary to match the Material Design rules? So the rules are pretty laxed when it comes to going up and down a hue. We've tried to match them as close as possible, but definitely welcome feedback. If you use these markup extensions, because all these markup extensions do is generate a resource dictionary, if you use these, then yes, they are automatically calculated. However, I'll look a little later at rolling your own custom themes, because that's what we're going to need to do for some of the other themes that are in, because this library has both a, let's jump back over here, it has both a color theme that it generates from a resource dictionary as well as generating a theme in code. And so if you want to go through and take full control of it and set all of the colors, you can do that. But if you take full control and set all the colors, you're now in full control and you have to set all the colors. So, or at least most of them. Okay. So we'll go through, we'll take care of that, and switch that guy out. Cool. So I think that is everything we need from our app.xaml, except for I'm pretty sure all of these brushes go away too. Because these we don't need. The markup extension should just handle those for us. Because these, I believe, are all just the Ma apps color theme brushes. Looks like it. Cool. So what we had to do here, we're now down to just one line of code. I like better. Okay, so back over here. So now we need to actually go through and pull off all of these. And I am going to cheat slightly and look at some code that I wrote previously, because I can't promise myself that I was going to remember all of this. So I cheated and wrote some of it ahead of time. Because unfortunately, memorizing APIs is not quite what I do. So we are going to just, I think I'm just going to grab this whole block of code and bring this in. And yeah. So all of this code here, not what I want to do. Too much time in VS Code, wrong keyboard shortcut. Okay. Okay, so here we are pulling this guy in and theme create. So I need a different, this is resolving to the wrong theme. Let me grab, because this really should be using, using theme is going to be, I promise, I really do know how to type. It's just hard to tell with how poorly I'm doing right now. Should be that theme object. I just have to fully qualify this right now because this project actually has a theme class, and I need it to not resolve to that right now. So we're going to come down here, and this guy here is, what are you doing? I might just exclude you from the project real quick just to make you go away. I don't really want to think about what you're resolving to. Perfect. Okay, so in the material design library, there is a new theme object itself. And more importantly, let's get rid of this var. And there is a convenient little static helper on it that takes in a base theme as well as a primary and secondary color. So if you were curious what that markup extension does when you call custom theme, it really is just doing this. It's passing in a base theme, a primary color, and an accent color, and then it's setting these. You'll notice there's static members on theme for getting both the light and the dark theme classes. Basically, we've gone through and codified up all of the theming brushes so that now you can act on strongly typed objects without necessarily having to guess at and remember the keys. You'll notice that all of these things, like, so primary mid is this color pair. A color pair class has a color and then an optional foreground color. So if you don't specify a foreground color explicitly, it will generate, or I should say, it'll guess based upon the lightness of the color whether the foreground color should be either white or black. So we'll take advantage of that later. That's all this contrasting foreground color method does here. And then, let's see, jump back, back, and too far. And let's see here. So if you want to go through and actually generate up one of these themes, and then you decide, you know, I really don't like what you guys generated for me for the primary color for the light and the dark, you can just go through and change these after the fact, or just don't call this helper method. So when you call set primary color, it brings in a primary color and just calls lighten and darken on it, effectively going one shade lighter or one shade darker. Again, you are free to change these. Or if this doesn't end up lining up with the spec very well, please let us know which colors were passed in and what they should have been. And I'm happy to take a look at it and try to adjust this to make it match. The hard part is we are, especially with arbitrary colors, some of the material design ones don't necessarily line up with this single shade lighter and darker. Different colors switch just a little bit. And so it's hard with arbitrary colors to make this work. So this is sort of a best guess. But the bundled themes should still line up pretty accurately with everything because on those we control all the colors. Okay, so that's basically all of that, all that this does. So what this is doing is there is a material design color enum, and it contains enum members for every color that was defined in the library. So before, all of these existed inside of resource dictionaries. And so now we have basically the base color, and then as well as references to all of the individual brushes that were used. Typically 5 through 900, and then accent color 1, 2, 4, and 700. You don't necessarily need to worry too much about these exact values. It's really just to try and make these guys line up nicely. But in our view model, to go through and generate out this list, what we're doing is we're just iterating over these enum members. And then we are checking to see if there is a corresponding accent value. So you'll notice these guys in here, and then somewhere in here, you'll notice there's, for example, deep orange and then deep orange accent. So all this is doing is iterating through this enum member, saying, okay, does this member have a corresponding member that ends in accent? Sort of a cheater way of doing effectively. Oh, thanks, Magnus. This is effectively a cheater way of going through and checking to say, hey, does this particular color theme have an accent color defined? And then it simply goes through and looks up the theme and builds it out and then sets it into the view model. So this view model is what we need to change out next, I think. Once again, I am going to somewhat cheat because I wrote this ahead of time and think I remember what I did. Okay, so rather than the theme object itself, we're going to switch. So in general, I usually prefer to act on interfaces rather than concrete implementations. So we're just going to flip these guys both over. So that theme class implements the iTheme interface. This is it's a fairly simple interface, but it's basically just a whole bunch of colors and color pairs. And again, color pair is just a color with an optional foreground color to go with it. Again, you'll notice all of these things are get set. You're free to take one of these theme objects and tweak it to make it match or persist and reload as much as you need. So, and it should make it simple. So this guy here, I did say I was going to change this out to make it a little nicer. So rather than doing sample brush, let's make it obvious that we're changing it. So let's go with sample color, and actually, you know what? We probably don't even need to have this property anymore, do we? Yeah, we could cheat. We don't even necessarily, well, let's hide the implementation. So this guy is just going to become, we'll go with a lambda body member, theme, primary mid, color. So this guy is just going to kick back the color, and we'll deal with converting that to a brush over in the view. And then here, I think we're going to switch this over and just do string name. I think that's roughly what I had done before, and then something like this. So that works there, and we'll jump back to our main view model, and this should get at least this much compiling. So let's back up. Before we deal with these guys, I'm going to just comment out these ones really quick. So these are the two custom themes that were being defined from code and from resource dictionaries. But before we get to dealing with those, I want to deal with sort of these other ones up here. So this idea of being able to toggle is light theme and is dark theme. One thing I will mention, if you start switching over to this new API, you need to switch all of your code over to this API. You'll get into very weird situations if you keep using the old obsolete methods with the newer 2.6.0 theming stuff. So if you start to do the switch, do it all or do none of it. Don't mix and match. But for this guy here, the easiest way, and this sort of starts to kind of highlight some of the basics of what is in this. So for starters, we don't really want to use this palette helper anymore, because this guy's whole point in life was to basically wrap setting all these Ma app brushes. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop him from the project too. Let's bring him back, and so rather than the Ma apps palette helper, we will go back to just the built-in palette helper class. So this is now the one that is right inside Material Design Themes, the same one that most of you are probably using. It's just got some obsolete members now, so things like query palette, set light dark, set accent color, set primary color. All of those are now effectively broken. Hey, thanks for the follow, BFO Zone, I think. So those accent colors are now, or those methods are now obsolete in favor of some of these other ones. So effectively, if you want to go through, before there was a nice little just set light dark, that has been slightly changed. And if you want to wrap this in a similar helper method, I never quite got around to it, but you can pull out the current theme, which is just going to give you back one of those theme objects that you can then act on and modify as you need to. So then in this case, we will do theme set base theme, which you'll note this is an extension method on it, and we will just do theme. Let's see here. What do we got coming in? We've got a Boolean coming in. So if the value is true, we'll do theme.light. If the value is false, we'll do theme.dark. Something like that. And then finally, now that we've modified the theme itself, we just simply go palette helper, set theme. And these two methods are sort of the key pieces that that the whole new theming API is built around. The idea of being able to query out your current theme, which wasn't necessarily easy to do before. There was the query palette, but then making modifications to that and reapplying that wasn't always as trivial as you would hope. So now you can pull the theme out. Again, it's just that same bunch of colors so that you can see all of your brushes that you might want to set. And then you can call set theme right back. There are extension methods for the set base theme, set primary, and set secondary colors, which are just those fancy helpers for automatically, adjusting back and forth. So this will toggle light and dark. This guy here, so let's see here. So when is set theme called? So this is called when one of those buttons is clicked. So it calls in with the theme color view model, which is the one that we modified here that has a theme and a name. And so in this case, this method just becomes palette helper, set theme, theme, theme. And this is only mostly right. So the problem here is this theme object was created right here, and you'll notice it was always created with a light theme. So we actually want to not just blindly set it. And this is less an artifact of the API and a little bit more of the way I structured this app, but we will do this. And I'm just going to cheat and grab this line right here. Let's theme view model. Let's just disambiguate these names since I'm reusing the word theme all over the place. Like that, and then this becomes, so if we're in the light theme, we'll just toggle that and make sure that this theme has the appropriate base to go along with it, because really all we're looking to do is change whatever is set for the primary and accent colors. And then we will just call set theme, which will adjust it. Oh, what are you squawking about, ReSharper? You don't like my name? Oh, lowercase m? Sure, why not? Okay, so this is this guy here. This comment is now highly misleading because this isn't easily an extension method. And let's just comment these out, and I think we are close to running. The last thing we need to do is we switched over, so clean up those usings, and I don't need my NuGet window open anymore. We switched over the theme color view model to, rather than having a brush in it, to just having the color all by itself. So we need to address that in our view. So this is, I believe, what you were driving at earlier, Tide. So this binding here is now going to go to sample color, but color is not a brush. So we need converter and static resource let's do something like solid brush converter, which we need to create. So let's just go and spin that guy real quick. So add new class, solid brush converter. So value converter, auto implement interface. Thank you. And I'm just going to go quickly. In reality, you should really type check your values and not just blindly new solid let's see, solid color brush. And then I suppose if somebody wanted to use it on a two-way binding, which we won't be at the moment, but so solid color brush, and just grab the color right back off of it. Yeah, I understand no reference exceptions possible. We aren't going to stress about those because those shouldn't be possible. And then we will just add this converter at the top, solid brush converter. Pick that guy up, and now it should just convert back and forth. So this is basically the short way of how I would go around it most of the time, tied of having my view model just expose the data and have it not know about the view. Most of the time I try to make my view models as agnostic of the view as I possibly can get them. And secondary color was not found. Well, then what did I call it? Why are you so confused? Apps bundled theme, secondary color. I think somebody has lost their mind. Let's rebuild this. The property secondary color was not found. Okay, let's whack you real quick and just get you to compile. What is your problem? This may be the fun of using a NuGet package that I just did the other night. Material design colors, public key token. Did I not get all of my NuGets updated? Did it not roll a new... Oh, I know what happened. This guy updated. Oh, but it didn't generate. It did not build new NuGet packages out on NuGet.org. That is the problem. Okay, so we're going to go around this problem for the moment. So there is a, let's see here. Let me just make sure I get signed into the right instance real quick before I drag my screen over. So 1 second here real quick. We are going to switch so I can make sure I'm in the right DevOps instance. So right now we have two build systems that are running, one on Azure DevOps and one on AppVeyor. The plan is eventually to obsolete AppVeyor in favor of DevOps. The problem is right now AppVeyor is still what's pushing out the NuGet packages to NuGet.org, and I was running with packages that were built on Azure DevOps, which Azure DevOps is now building all of the NuGet packages, whereas AppVeyor is only building MaterialDesignInXaml, the core library. So let's switch back. Okay, so DevOps, and I'm going to just cheat real quick. So there is technically a quite a few pipelines, but what I am interested in is grabbing these builds, which I suspect will be the hang on, do you not let me down? Oh, you're going to make me download them one at a time. Okay, fine. I'll just grab you one at a time then. I am wanting these latest ones. I did put in a request to James to review the stuff so that we can kick the 2.6.0 version live. So hopefully that happens in not too distant of a future. Because you'll notice I have started tagging several of the issues as the 3.0 release so that we can get those guys fixed. So I'm going to just cheat really quick. So downloaded all the NuGet packages. If people want, I will make these available. You can always download them directly. The plan is to expose a better CI feed so that people can get these a lot better. But again, we're kind of in that halfway point, and it's one of those things I want to get addressed on the 3.0 release, is getting these pipelines hammered out and running. So let's see here. I need to put these in. So I don't know how many people may have seen these before, but there is a place files and definition. So one of the things that you can do with NuGet, if you get access to the NuGet packages, is I just have this folder set up in C:\dev NuGet. And then over on my NuGet browser, you'll notice my source is currently set to NuGet.org. But I also have this local source that's set up right here that's just pointed at this folder. So as long as you put all of your NuGet packages in this folder, I can just flip over to local and grab all my updates, which is awesome because this is what I want. This is one of the reasons why switching over to the other build system is going to be hard. We kind of have to do it with a major rev of the package, or at least a full version rev of the package. Otherwise, these CI numbers, the build IDs between AppVeyor and DevOps, I wasn't going to try to keep those in sync and go back and forth. So I kind of want to just do a whole package version. So same thing, but I'm going to flip over. This does mean, now that I'm thinking about it, that the packages that I pushed out Sunday and Monday night are probably broken for people trying to use this new API. So please don't grab those CI packages and try to use this. You'll get the same error that I did, because we need to get out those API changes to the other NuGets as well. So I will see about getting CI packages pushed for those. So this guy here, that should now exist. Hey, look, no more little squigglies. That's what we're talking about. Okay, compile and run. This should now work. Like I said, the other thing too is if people are wanting these and you don't see the NuGet packages, you can just go out and download them. And I have clearly broken something. My color theme is kind of there, but I have lost my view of the universe. So what the heck did I do on my main window that caused all those to break? So my items control, that guy there, did I not add something into my main window ViewModel? Let's see here. So theme colors, add range. Theme colors should be defaulting to a list. It should have a bunch of stuff. Great. That should get built. What did I do? What did I do? Let's take a look. Because all I changed was there and there. That should build. That should build. Set light dark, get primary theme. You should be obsolete. You should be obsolete. That should not be necessary. So let's just relaunch this guy real quick, and I'm going to fire up Snoop, and we're going to see what the heck is happening to my items control, because it should be right there. It's clearly not. It's bound there. Data type is set. This seems like the only way this should happen is if I don't have any items in my collection. Maybe I should validate that those still line up. So let's see. Navigate in there, and then the items control is going to be right next door. So switch. There's my items control. There's my items control. Actual height is 0, which is why we're not seeing anything. Let's look at the data context. Theme colors is a list, and it has no items in it. Okay, so this would clearly be a problem. Let's see here. You're telling me none of these matched. Let's see. So try parse. Go through. Select add range. Let's just rebuild this guy real quick. I'm a little shocked given that I copied and pasted this code from something I wrote previously, so seems a little off. So step over and theme colors count 0. So let's go back my execution pointer up and let's rerun this and see what the heck is going on. Set next statement. Okay, and F11. So enum try parse. Red is 50. Don't expect. Don't expect. 300. Red 400. Red 500. Red. Really? Enum try parse on all of those returned false. What the heck? This is red. Ah, that's why, because somebody renamed his enum members right after dropping the word accent from it. Because I was trying to standardize the API. That's the problem. So we'll back up and try this again. So again, rather than the word accent, the word secondary for the what used to be accent colors. At least from what I saw on the new material design docs, this seemed to be the naming scheme they were going with, though I still found a couple references to accent in a few places. Requested value. And I broke the universe because one should always change all of their code. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Switch over and paste. There we are. Try this again. So if you change the text in one spot, you should change it in the other. Or perhaps this should be a tuple or something. Ah, there we go. Okay. So this guy now comes through. We can change our themes. We can go through. Light and dark, pink, lime, and more importantly, you'll notice this guy's toggling too. I might double check my MaApps brushes because it looks like whatever brush this guy's using, I don't know if that's intentional that that's staying blue or if it's not. I think the answer is not. Real quick while I'm in here, let me just look. Because there is a chance that the MaApps version I'm using isn't compatible, and if it is, I would like to know that. Let's see, dragging thumb, let's see, where is that toggle switch button? It's probably got the brush up here too. MaApps Metro. Is it going to be down a little further? So this is toggle switch on brush Win 10. Toggle switch button on switch brush Win 10. I'm going to just make a note of this brush to go and well, how do I want to copy that resource name. Print screen it is. I just want to make sure that I go back and check that brush, because if there's another one that we should be setting, I would like to know it and get that adjusted. Because again, the nice part is now I don't have to rev the entire library if I need to change some of the MaApps integration. I can just rev that library by itself. So going to ignore that for now, and let's go back and look at doing the custom ones. It would be good to use this app for the color picker testing. Yeah, I don't disagree, Tide. I actually, so my material design example repo, one of the things that I did for the 2.6.0 release is I just updated every project I had. Admittedly, they're all small projects with one or two things in them. And then I just started running them all to see if I saw any problems. And so this is one of the first ones I run to test the theming stuff. This and the two demo apps are usually the sum total of my full testing, because if I get all of those working across the board, I'm usually fairly confident we've covered everything. and if there's a control that we miss, I try to get it added to one of the projects. Okay, so back to the other thing. So this is all well and good as long as you're using the built-in color theme stuff. But now let's look at doing both generating color themes from resource dictionaries as well as from code. So this app here has this custom Xaml theme, and all it does is declare a bunch of colors just right here in line with each of these. Nothing fancy. These happen to match the material design brush names, but that's coincidental. You could theoretically name these however you want, as you will see. So let's take and pick on, I think let's do the code one first, because I think that one's probably the simpler option. So we will do generate theme from code, bring that guy back, and then let's see, generate theme from code. So this was the fire and ice theme, the blue and orange as it were. Okay, so this code is all well and good. We're going to just comment it out. So step one, create a new theme. So I think I'm just going to just straight up new up a new theme object. We will then set the base theme. And this one isn't going to matter too much because ultimately this theme here, the base theme is going to get overwritten on the onset theme. So we can pass really anything we want here, and it's not going to really make a difference just with the way this app is set up. So we'll just go with light because it doesn't matter. And then we want to go through and set the primary colors and the secondary colors to effectively match these ones here. So you'll note the light one, which used to be primary 200, was salmon, and then we went up to orange and then red, with the what used to be called accent color being set to deep sky blue with a foreground color of green. So once again, I'm going to just cheat a little bit so I don't have to type all this again. And so these are just the standard WPF colors being brought in. This demo app, and currently nothing in the material design library, takes advantage of secondary light and dark. They're added to the theme API with the assumption that we will take advantage of them in the future. But they are there for your usage. Just know that none of the built-in controls are taking advantage of these. So for now, we're just setting all of them to the same color. Okay, and then finally, we just kick back the theme. Done. And again, this is going through and explicitly setting the foreground color. If we wanted to, we could omit these and let it guess at the appropriate foreground color. In fact, let's do that real quick. Again, if you let it guess at the foreground color, it's only going to pick white or black. It's not. There's no other ground. It basically says, is this a dark color? Okay, I'm going to pick light, or I'm going to pick white. Is this a light color? Okay, I'm going to pick black. And so especially colors where that white or black, neither one of them are great, you may end up wanting to explicitly set a foreground color for them. The built-in color themes, those all just work just fine. Use the additional secondary colors. Currently, no, Tide. The only one that's being used by the existing stuff is the secondary mid. So this is the only one that's currently in use. Do any of the material design controls? That is a good question. So the spec itself, even though it outlines the controls, isn't overly picky about defining controls and colors. Sort of having styles that mix a particular theme color to a control is something that this library does, just because it makes it easier on the styles and doesn't force you to set things repeatedly. But the spec really just sort of outlines, here's the colors and here's what each color means, use it appropriately. Oh, and here's a set of controls, and so mix and match where it makes sense. So they define the concept of secondary, mid, light, and dark, and sort of when those would get used, but there's not really a a concept of mixing the controls and the colors together in the spec. It is the material design spec is more of here's how you should lay things out, and here's what things mean and what users are going to expect. Put them together in the right way, which is both good and bad. So it gives a lot of freedom, because part of what they've done with it is initially it was just Android phones, but now you've got things like Chromebooks, where you're starting to see these apps come across and material design getting used in web pages. And so it's not just for mobile, it's trying to be an entire design framework, if that all makes sense. Okay, so this is all it takes if you want to go through and create up a theme in code. So if you want to, yeah, or Windows apps, exactly. So if you want to go through and build out some means of serializing your theme and reloading it, or just building out your own custom stuff in code behind, it shouldn't be any harder than this. You do need to make sure that you do set all of the brushes on your theme. And it can be as simple as simply calling theme set base, set primary, set secondary. If you call all three of those, that'll have everything set, and you'll be done. Because there are quite a few brushes on this theme object, but the idea being that by codifying all of the brushes, it now means if and when we make any breaking color or brush changes, you'll get compile errors and not just missing resources and having to track those down anymore, which I think is much nicer. Okay, so let's do the one from the resource dictionary as well. So before, what this guy was doing is it was just calling into the resource dictionary. Okay, fine. Load reference. Go be happy so you can stop whining at me. It was just calling into the resource dictionary and looking up those colors based on their keys. So again, when I said that these names just happen to match the material design theme, it really is. This could be my hue color 1, my hue color 2, if you wanted. The key part is these keys just have to match the keys from the XAML dictionary. So if we wanted to go through and change these guys out, all we got to do is a couple quick switches. So once again, I'm going to just comment this guy out because he's a little meaningless, and we're going to start same thing here. We're going to set a base theme just so that I know that all my brushes are set. But again, this set is pretty meaningless because it's going to get overridden here before this theme actually gets applied to anything. And then I'm going to once again just cheat and grab my little code snippet ahead of time. So same type of thing as before. It just pulls out the color pair and looks up the color from the resource dictionary, pulls it out, and sends it back. So nothing too fancy. Rather than name, I think we're going to change this up to be key, because name was the name of the theme, not the name of the color. So that was a wee bit misleading in the previous code. And then the last thing, return theme. Okay, so this guy, the name no longer goes here. And actually, I'm going to make these guys return iThemes just to be a little nicer, because there's no reason to make this API strongly coupled to that particular object. Okay, and so this guy here loads up the resource dictionary, and then we're going to do this guy where we go Control U. Let's see, get theme from resource dictionary, and there we go. So we've got our jungle green theme here that it's going to pull out of that. So let's fire this guy up. And hopefully this guy go. And now we should have 2 extra options in our list of color themes that we can just toggle between. So make this window a little bigger so I can see everything. So if I go with my fire and ice option, I now have those colors. If we go dark, I think it's a little more obvious to see. If I go jungle, I now have my jungle themed ones as well. You can see those switched all over. And that's all there is to it. Really everything in this theming API I think boils down to using the new get set theme on the palette helper. And if you want to go even more low level than that, on the resource dictionary itself, most of the calls ultimately boil down to resource dictionary set theme, which this extension method just shells out, shells out to a resource dictionary. It takes in a theme object, and this is somewhat ugly to look at, but all it does is go through and set all of those brushes from the theme into the resource dictionary. And that's it. Magnus, I know I saw you in the chat earlier. Is that helpful? I know you were asking for a blog post on this, and I think I may still end up writing one, just so that there's a little bit more thorough documentation. But I figured I at least wanted to go through this to show off what I think is a cleaner API. I hope. So I'm hoping this is easier for everybody. One other thing I don't think I mentioned, I think I implied. So there's Ma Apps bundled theme. Oh, awesome. And then there is also the Ma Apps, what is it? Custom color theme. So if you want to go through and change up rather than using the built-in ones, so primary, aqua, secondary. We'll just make this really obvious. I don't know, red. So you can go through and do something like this. Both of these guys just derive from the Material Design markup extension. The one thing that it does do is it gives you a nice injection point to be able to hijack it. So I think I'll walk through that real quick as well. So in addition to this iTheme interface, subtly hidden under the covers is also a theme manager. So if you have something in your app where you want to do stuff when the theme changes, there is an event that gets raised that you can tie into and watch to effectively make additional changes. So there we go. So aqua is the primary, and you can see in this case, even though with aqua is the mid, the light is pretty obvious, but the dark, I don't know, I might want that more dark. At least from on my screen, those look fairly similar. Maybe it's not as bad as I think. Well, let's take a look at that real quick. So inside of these guys, I don't remember if it's exposed on the palette helper or not. Let's look. So is the theme manager here? It's not. So I think it's only on the resource dictionary. Let's see, resource dictionary, get theme manager. So on the, and this is one of the kind of the hidden parts of the API. It's public, so you have access to it if you want it, but I'm not 100% sure on it yet, which is why it hasn't migrated throughout. So if you were to look on, let's see, app.current, let's see, resource dictionary, get theme manager. So var theme manager. So you can call this guy. Let's clean that up, replace my var so it's a little more obvious. Base class, great. This theme manager class itself just contains a single event for theme changed. So we'll just register up on this guy and create method. So if you want to go through and do something, the event args that come through on this guy have both the old theme, the new theme, as well, and the resource dictionary that it's getting applied to. Because all of this theming stuff, especially inside of WPF, themes are implicitly hierarchical. Hierarchical? I haven't had enough caffeine. I can't talk tonight. In that, if you apply these theme resource dictionaries at a lower level, that will override something that was set, say, in your app.xaml or window.xaml. Which is why this thing also comes through with the resource dictionary where those were applied at. The thing to note is this theme manager is also per resource dictionary. So when you do the new set theme methods on like the palette helper, so when you call palette helper set theme, one of the things that it does at the very end of the method, I should probably stop looking at, so you'll notice this is just application current resources set theme. Come on, all the way in. The last thing that this method does, this is horrible to look at. Let's look at the real code. I'll bring this over real quick. Is it goes through and sets a it sets up the theme manager so that it exists. But that theme manager only exists at that resource dictionary. So if you wire up on this event on the theme manager that is at the root, so your app.xaml, so resource dictionary extensions, you will not get events if somebody changes it only at a lower level. There's not a great way of handling that at the moment. So there's an outstanding feature that I know Robert Snipe was looking at implementing potentially for routed events, which then would give you a means of hijacking it. So when you call set theme at the very end, it checks your resource dictionary to see if there's a theme manager. If there's not, it creates a new one for you and sets it in and then calls on theme change, just notifying you that, hey, by the way, the theme has changed. This theme manager is how the Ma app stuff is ultimately working. So if we look at our custom color theme, this guy here is just wiring up on that theme changed event. And so when the theme changes, it goes through and applies all of the Ma apps brushes to that resource dictionary and just builds it out. And this set Ma apps extension method is effectively what that other one was before, setting up all of those brushes to make sure that those line up correctly. So if in the event that there is something that you want to do and you want to get access to those theme changed events, again, most of the time what you're probably looking to do is grab it off of your application level resources, since I think most of the time this is where people are probably changing their theme. Again, your app may do something different. I've heard of people who have different themes per window or whatnot. But you can grab the theme manager for that appropriate level to be able to pull it through. And I think that probably covers all of the theming API that I was going to look at tonight. Does anyone have any questions on this, or is there anything else themey related that people are hoping to see or wanting to see? This actually ended up going a lot quicker than I expected. Normally I type a lot slower than this, at least when people are looking at me. No questions. Wow, I'm either good at explaining this or it's as clear as mud. So I'm going to go with hopefully this all makes sense in here. So with that said, probably go through and start looking at a few other things. So I think one of the things I wanted to take a quick peek at was this Ma apps brush thing to see if there was something else that needed to be fixed on this. So if people want to hang around, I may just see about sniping this bug real quick. There was up here, and I think this may have been somewhat the crux of the problem. These brushes here, I don't know if these got migrated into the Ma apps helper. This might be I suspect the crux of the problem. So let's just jump into the library and start looking at these, because that would be one nice thing to go through and fix as well real quick. And I think so the mixing of these can still work. When the theme gets applied in, jump back over here. So when we apply and call this set solid color brush, let's just jump down to set solid color brush. It does two things. So in addition to setting the brush with the name, it'll also add brush with color suffix on the end and embed the color name as well as a resource. So if you want to go through and reference just the colors by themselves, say you're retheming another third-party library and you need access to the colors and not necessarily the direct brushes, you can get access to them this way as well. Again, this does assume that you're calling the new API and you're not using the old straight-up resource dictionaries. Let's clobber that real quick. And where'd you go? Visual Studio. You are somewhere off in La La Land. What monitor are you opening on? Oh, it's right in front of me. Perfect. So MaApps Draggables demo. So this is the other app, Tide. I don't know if you've seen. This one also has a similar color picker setup on it. And it looks like, this is probably the problem, is this guy only had a subset of the brushes, whereas mine had all of them. I don't know why I did not notice this before. So that is probably the issue. So let's jump over to this guy here. And let's just close out everything. Way too many tabs open. Way too many tabs open. And I think all we need to do is get all of these brushes set up appropriately and then get a new set of NuGet packages built. And then the world should be a happy place. Come on. Come on. ReSharper has to probably go and grep everything. Apparently I forgot to turn off my notifications. Go away. Stop helping me. Focus assist. Thank you. Okay, so we'll pick this up, and I think then the question is just which of these got omitted. So let's just copy this set of brushes, and then we'll bring these over and make sure we cover these cases, because I would hate to break MaApps. Partly because one of the apps that I work on at work leverages it, and so I have a vested interest in making sure I don't just hose it. Okay, so we'll just bring these guys in. Great, perfect. So highlight brush, covered already. Great, done. Accent base color brush. Accent base color brush, not there. So accent color brush. So accent base color brush, and it should be the same as accent color brush. Great, great. Those are both done. Color brushes 2, 3, and 4. Done, but color brush 2 has primary of 500 and an opacity set. We are dropping, so let's see. 3 should be fine as light. Great. 2 and 4 I want to come back to. Window title brush, dark at 700, great, done. Progress brush, linear gradient from dark to mid, great, done. Checkmark fill, primary 500, and that should be primary mid. Okay, right arrow fill, mid, right? Because primary 500 Accent color brush 2, mid. Yeah, because 700's dark, 500's mid, 200's light. So those should have both been mid. I'm finding several bugs in here. Awesome. Okay, ideal foreground color brush. Primary mid, and then it grabs the foreground color. So this get foreground color, all this does on a color pair will either return the foreground color that was set or do the lookup to determine if it should be white or black. So it's just a convenience method on there. So ideal foreground color should be mid. Ideal disabled brush. That has no opacity. Oh, set brush has no opacities. Why aren't we using this? Accent brush 2, 0.8, and I'm guessing adding. Yeah, I think you are right, Ty. That is exactly where I was landing. I'm not sure why this one was 0.8 and the other one was 0.2. I'm seriously doubting that 2 100ths on the opacity is probably even visible. There's a certain point where your eye just can't usually detect it. Maybe it's my old eyes that are not good at this, and my glasses. So let's see. And this is primary mid. Man. Okay. So I'm going to apologize to anybody who is using this new API on my apps, because clearly I had several of these brushes that were wrong. Okay, so this is where we start getting into the area that wasn't covered before, is all of these, because the data grid brushes weren't added and the Ma apps toggle switch brushes were not added. Okay, so and I might even go pull up the Ma apps code real quick and just check it, because I'm wondering if there are new brushes in there. Sort of the nice cheater approach is I can update to match their update cadence now, and so in theory I should be able to get all of this going. So let's see, highlight brush should be primary mid, and I believe let's see, mid.color. Cool. That does that. Let's see here. Let's do, because I think I want these grouped. That just makes sense. Highlight text color. Let's see, primary mid. Get foreground color. There was no opacity on that guy. Shouldn't be any on this guy. That's a copy and paste error, or editor inheritance as I commonly like to call it. Let's see here. So mouse over highlight brush, and that's a primary light. Color. Focus. We can whack this guy now. This is a primary mid. And that goes away. And this is also making me wonder if I need to be adding data grids to these demo apps. Because I know I've got toggle switches in there, which is what I was using for that toggle light dark. But the fact that we missed all of these brushes makes me think that we need a data grid to ensure that I catch those. So if somebody wants to add that to this Ma Apps Draggables demo, that would be great. I don't think there's anything in there that does it. Let's see, primary, mid, get foreground color, and that'll clear up the two data grids, and then we will do the toggle brushes. There, this should be better. And I might just replace this DLL on my demo app and make sure that this guy switches over appropriately. Primary mid, color, And there is a reason that this foreground color is a method and not just a property, aside from the fact that foreground color exists as a property here. This contrasting foreground color can be mildly expensive. I mean, it's just some math, but it is like even on the color picker Tide, I think you've noticed this. The delay in having to calculate the HSV color transformations isn't something you necessarily want to be doing, say, several times a second, like in the order of a few dozen. It gets a little laggy. So that is one of the things that I'm hoping to take a look at in 302, is to try and get that to the point where the performance doesn't slow it down, and we don't need to have a delay on the binding, which would be nice. There's a couple kind of performance things that I'm hoping to squeeze into 3.0. The big thing is probably going to be .NET 5 or .NET Core 3.0, depending on which version name you've heard. Support for that. See, primary 5, foreground, get foreground color. Okay, that should set all the brushes. That's probably going to be the big feature, and I'm planning on revving the core package version to 3.0 at the same time. And then also cleaning up a bunch of obsolete and making several breaking changes. For those who are interested, and I will point this issue out because I would like feedback from people. I haven't posted or made a big fuss about it yet because it's still a ways out. But if there are breaking level changes or other issues people want to link to for stuff to change, please comment on here in these breaking 3.0 changes. So there's several things that have been kind of common pain points, like the card defaulting its vertical alignment to top. That's bitten a lot of people when it doesn't resize like you would expect it to, because in WPF the default vertical alignment is stretch. This one changes that default. It's confusing. So, but unfortunately, to change that default is a breaking change. So a lot of those breaking changes I'm looking to document here and get lined up. This was another one that somebody pointed out that was absolutely perfect, how our vertical alignments aren't even close to lining up, and these all should be. I wanted to go through and look at this a little closer. I think they should all default to center, or because that's somewhat the problem here, is I wasn't sure whether it was just the vertical alignment or if it was the vertical content alignment inside of those that was getting each of these off. Regardless, it's clearly a problem. I think the only question is, what is the correct fix? And so I was going to take a quick peek at that. I think the vertical alignment, all of these should be stretch, and I think the vertical content alignment should probably be centered. But I wanted to look specifically the text box that may not work for due to our underline control, and these things may need to all just default their vertical content alignment to bottom, which I think as long as they all line up, that's the big thing, because I've run into this before when you're building a form and stuff just doesn't line up and you end up starting to tweak those properties, and I think by default they should line up unless you change something. So I was gonna look at that. If anyone else wants to look at it and throw a comment, submitted an issue to add the data grid Dragwell's demo. Awesome, thank you, Tide. That is perfect. In fact, I'm gonna go in, if that's something we just added. I'm going to label this up real quick. So good first issue relates to the MA apps, up for grabs. And for anybody watching, anything that I label as good first issue, this is pretty much me signing up to help you if you have any problems. I do try to, when I'm going through and triaging issues and looking at questions, I try to prioritize anybody who has a question on a good first issue first. So if you're working on one of these, I do try to give that a little bit more attention. So if you want to work on one of these, the only thing you have to do is throw a comment saying, hey, I'm going to work on it, and then go to town. So if I don't hear from you in like a week, I'll probably comment and say, hey, you still working on it? You need help? Can somebody else pick it up? But other than that, you're good to go. Okay, so this guy is here. I want to rebuild this DLL real quick, and then I'm going to just throw this into my other app and make sure that this changes that toggle switch at the top. Because before we were just getting that blue, and I think this will address that. And I'm thinking I probably forgot to comment out these brushes when I was working on this the other night, which is probably why it looked to me like it was working. Because these resources would have gotten set, which unfortunately gave me false confidence, which is not good. Not good. Okay. It's only 10:30. Little more caffeine. Little more caffeine. Oh, Mountain Dew, the sweet nectar of life. Okay, did you finish? Great. Rebuild successful. And let's go into here, and I think I just whack the NuGet package and do a straight up project reference instead. Yeah, you go away. Yep, thank you. And remove that NuGet package for me. And that'll get closed. And let's go through and references. Add reference. We're just going to go straight to the DLL. So browse. Material Design Toolkit and maps. Bin debug. And that guy. Great. And then hopefully just do a rebuild to make sure that it wipes out that old reference and puts the new one in its place. Because I don't always trust the versioning on it. Visual Studio does a pretty good job of knowing when things need to be updated, but there are times it misses. So sometimes that clean and rebuild is, at minimum, just for my own good peace of mind. Hey, that looks promising. That's what I'm talking about. That toggle switch now changes. So that's what we were missing. That is what we were missing. That little toggle switch one. Okay, while we're on the topic of MAApps brushes, let's go jump real quick over at MAApps. And let's go look, because I'm curious. I realize I'm going to be looking at their latest 2.0 stuff, but I am curious as to what brushes are being defined over here. Okay, so MAApps Metro, and I think themes. As you can tell, I don't necessarily play in this one too much, so I'm sort of going to fumble my way around for a moment. Oh, you know what we can do? You know what we can do? We can just, because ultimately this is what I'm looking for. Let's just find this guy in the source. Oh, I think I dropped the M. Yeah. Let's just find this guy and see where he lives. Because I can't imagine. Yeah. So styles, theme template. Perfect. This is what we're looking for. Ah, so he's got something fancy. I might have to look at how he's doing this. So he's embedding string resources for the name and the display name. That is one thing that I did not add in this 2.6.0 release, and I'm curious if people have an opinion, if it matters, if embedding the name of the theme inside of it is useful. So I can see how it would be helpful to be able to query that out of the resource dictionary. The only thing that always got me is you're always in control of what theme is being set, so you could always track it and add it. So if people are interested, the other thing is because it just accepts an iTheme interface, you could always derive from that and add your own name property and then register up on that theme manager event and again handle it. I don't know. I'm torn. Some people like this, and I'm guessing he probably has a nice, on his theme manager, a nice way of querying all this stuff out, so it does look nice. Okay, so these are all his colors. I'm more interested in the brushes. Universal control brushes. Ooh, so these have changed a bit. Ooh, there are a lot of brushes in here. Control validation brushes. WPF default brushes. So these ones I'm less concerned with. It looks like I could well, shoot, some of these, so I might need to go through and check these and see. So at minimum, these guys have been significantly expanded. Let's take a look at the history on this file real quick. I'm curious how. I'm wondering how much of this is coming from his new 2.0 stuff. First step for generated themes. Oh, so Bastian Smith was the one who started this work. Cool. Cool. It looks like he probably started at similar time as we did. We ended up at a slightly different solution. Got it. So he basically templated out all of these things. And I'm guessing they've got something that goes through and just does a magical string replace on all of these guys. So if that's the case, I wonder if we could cheat and leverage this. Because it looks like there's only a fixed number of variables on this guy. And I'm wondering if we just set the appropriate variables, then I don't have to worry about the exact brushes. That might be cleaner. The only part that, and so we wouldn't necessarily be overriding these brushes, but maybe that's okay. That might be okay. Because their theming clearly doesn't override these directly, unless they've got something extra in. Okay, I could get on board with that. Let's look at what else is in here. Generator parameters. So I'm curious when this thing runs. So this is the dark theme. Because this is the other thing that's a little weird, is we don't necessarily need to override all their themes. Some of them it's important to do so. Other ones it really doesn't matter. So this is dark, light, and then these are the color schemes of changing them. So something must just ingest this guy and do a set of all of these things. Yeah, because for the most part we don't care too much about all of the brushes. Now I'm really curious as to how this thing's working. Okay, so let's back up. There's this theme generator. How do you work? I'm kind of curious to go and look at this commit, the initial one. First step in generated themes. So what else did you add in here? So let's see. Build props. Sure, great. XAML color scheme generator. So this is a NuGet package, huh? Yeah, the MAAP stuff does rev pretty quick. So Juan and Bastian do quite a bit on it. They also, Bastian Smith works on the controls EX library, which if you've looked around in our packet files, you'll notice we actually reference it as well. This library. Okay, so this is Bastian's XAML color scheme generator. Ha ha ha. While we're placing certain parts of a template. See the generator input and template files. So this is how this guy is working. Ah, interesting, 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 interesting. Okay. I want to see this guy here, because this is kind of clever. I might need this for another project where I was doing some generation on XAML files. So he is using it for his Fluent ribbon. Got it. So template files, default values, base colors. And clearly that's changed since the README. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Okay. This is worthy of a star. I'm gonna keep this. This is one of those libraries I like to keep in your back pocket just to see. And does it kick off from? Let's see what the build script does. Target build, ms configure pre-release. So not a lot of fanciness. Tools version. This looks like an old MS build PowerShell script. Not too interesting. Show me the app there. So nothing fancy. Literally just calls build for CI, builds it out, and away you go. Okay. So not overly fancy. Add strong name to assembly. Builds that out. It's on JSON in the tools. Scene generator. So it looks like this is actually something that could go as a .NET Global tool. Doesn't look like that's what it is right now because it's generating out, but it seems like it's just built as a straight up executable. Sorry, Ty, I just saw your message. And this guy here, interesting. Okay, so it builds this out, grabs a mutex lock on the individual file. Ooh, interesting. Looks like it's using the GUID to identify current any version of his assembly that's locked on it, and blocks so that this guy can basically be tied in, because you sometimes run into this case where you get multiple processes loading up your project, specifically if you've got like some sort of live unit testing or ncrunch, those type of ones that may kick off, or multiple MS build processes. So dealing with that. MD5 hash. So this is basically just shelling out to the color scheme generator, and this guy is the one that actually does all the work. So reads in the input file, deserializes the JSON out, color scheme base colors, color scheme, double iterates over the base, and the color scheme colors, generates the file, generates it out. Okay. So yeah, really is just a fancy, albeit very fancy, find and replace on all of the colors. Oh, man, you gotta love those curly braces inside of an interpolated string. Whew. Yeah, this is one of the only times where the C# string interpolation gets really, really ugly, is when you need to do, like, say, double curly braces, and you need to escape those, which itself is another curly brace. So you just get curly brace spam all the way across. So nice and clean. Don't know if I would necessarily leverage it on our project, but definitely a worthwhile thing to keep in mind. So that's ultimately how they're generating it. But that leaves me in a good position. Let's see, jump back here. When it comes to looking up the themes for these brushes. So it does make me wonder, though, at least for the next release, because this is what makes it hard, is because this has clearly been switched for their next 2.0 release. This is coming. So I will want to make sure that we are updated for these. And again, I'm not sure, because we can kind of cheat and get away with not supporting all the brushes, because we don't have to necessarily apply all of them. It's only the ones that matter. Great things for mobs back in the day. Yeah, Ty, I've done something similar too, where I've needed to have a bunch of themes, where I effectively did just load it in as XML and do a find and replace on it. I mean, it's not necessarily a terribly complicated thing, but it is one of those issues that these types of files, you end up with a lot of duplication for each of your color themes, which is part of where we started to end up with. And I think I like our codified API, because this certainly solves part of the problem with dealing with the spam and trying to manage all of these. But I don't know if it necessarily fixes the issue of making it easier for somebody who wants to change the color theme. I was going to look. I thought I saw a theme manager sitting around in here. I'm curious what the API is. Yeah, theme manager. What's this guy? What do you do? Because I'm guessing this theme manager and theme class have got to be similar to what we built out, where it's effectively a codified version of it. So theme takes in a resource dictionary. Okay, so he uses these to pull out those name, display name, color theme stuff. Great. Showcase brush, color scheme, base color scheme, still just straight up string matching, which I understand not necessarily wanting to codify all your brushes, because it means you have to, yeah, it is very tedious. It means you have to keep everything in sync, which is obnoxious, but I guess my opinion is it feels like with good unit testing, it doesn't really matter. So theme manager, very similar to what we used to do for pulling out all of our built-in themes, is extract out the compiled resources, which isn't horrible, totally doable, obviously. Let's see, add a theme. Pulls through, get inverse theme. So basically just does a switch on the name and looks for the appropriate URI. Okay. Theme dictionary, resource format style, change theme. Change theme works. It does cap you at using one of the built-in theme names, which is fine. Because the app that I work on that uses my apps, there is no real theming change. There's a slider that lets you effectively go from light to dark theme, and that's about it. So not overly advanced, let's say. Yeah, so detect theme, extracts the stuff out. Yeah, okay. So for reference, this, I believe here, is the hackery I was talking about doing. So, because this is, and I think this is where I'd seen it before. The Windows 10 stuff, you can detect where, let's see, so if I do personalize, what is it, theme, what's the easiest way to get it? Theme and related settings. So under Windows 8 and Windows 10, they added the concept of dark theme to Windows. Why am I synced theme? Is this where it is? I know I'm somewhat hesitant to just change it. Ah, there it is. Choose your default app mode, light and dark theme. So you can, and I've got this synced across too many machines, so I don't want to actually click the mouse. But you can actually go through and query this information back out. And so ultimately what I would love to, yeah, exactly, Ty, for inherit at the root level, I want to query that value back out and then default based upon the user setting. Because if you've set your window or your Windows layout into dark theme, you probably want your apps to fall into dark theme by default. Again, as the app developer, you're still in control. If you want that behavior, you can go with inherit. If you want to, say, no, my app doesn't look good in dark theme, I'm going to do light only, great, set it to light, you're done. But it then leaves it up to you as the app developer to pick sort of which behavior you want to do. The one thing I will say is if you let the users toggle between themes, always test in all of them, because it will bite you if you don't. I cannot tell you how many bugs in my apps I've had to fix because of that. This is always interesting. So, cool. Well, that at least gets that lined up, and that gives me pointed in the right direction. I think I am going to poke a little bit further at the Ma app stuff. I'm probably going to pull down the 1.6 version of the code and take a look at it, just to make sure that we are covering all of the brushes for their latest release, and make sure that this is a reasonably complete set. Again, there might be some brushes that they have that we don't bother to set because we don't have a meaningful color to set there, but I think for at least all of these will get in. Oh, so we changed this. Let's see. I should do this right. We should pull request it in. We should pull request it. I occasionally get into the habit of just cowboying my commits straight into master, which is not a good idea. Create branch, Ma apps, brushes. So we'll just make a... We have Git. We can use good branching. So let's do here. Fixing missing Ma apps brushes. Cool. And I just want to double check some of these. Dark, adds the opacity, gets all of those in. Great. Okay, so we'll push that, and I'll pull request it and just make sure that the CI systems kick off. I have been doing quite a bit of pipelining work, and I'm finally at the point where I'm reasonably happy with it. Where'd my this guy? So I'm sure some of you have probably seen way too many commits of mine going in just mucking with YAML files. It's unfortunately addictive. Yeah, there are quite a few. If people are interested, I might even just pop over and... Didn't I have that open on one of these screens? Oh yeah, I did have it open. Let's pull request this guy real quick. Fixing missing Ma apps brushes. So let's do, this is technically going to drop on 2.6, and sure, pull request. So if people are interested, not all of this is public, but at least for like the build pipelines, when you kick off pull requests, you can go through and click and at least get a view of the pipelines that have been run and what gets kicked off. So this one is the simple... So I've got a couple build pipelines. This one kicks off for both pull requests and merges into master. And it'll just validate that your pull request runs. So 2.6.0 release window yet. So the answer tied, given that I just found a couple bugs after this thing merges. I usually wait on the library owner, James, to just give a quick sign-off before things get pushed out. I got a message from him yesterday? Recently. He'd been out for a little bit, said he would review it soon and should be able to get it pushed out. So hopefully soon. I'm kind of hoping that I don't run into too many more of these 2.6.0 issues as I've been fixing them. I might start a 3.0 branch and just work on getting some of the other pull requests merged into that, just to get a bit of ahead of the game. But I would hope in the next week, but don't hold me too tightly to that. So other build pipelines, Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I'm one of the things is with these new pipelines, I'm kind of hoping that we can increase the speed and the cadence because right now doing a release, there's a bunch of manual steps, and I'm trying to automate all of those away. So this one here, this one actually helped me out earlier today. So on the wiki, we have a page that lists out all of the control styles that are inside of the library. And one of the things, so there's a, this guy fires up. There's a nice little hidden markdown comment. So if you do go to hit edit, I'm hoping this big warning right at the top of the file tells people please don't, because this on every merge into master, this build pipeline runs, and it kicks off a PowerShell script that's right inside of the scripts directory that generates this markdown. And in addition to generating it, it just pushes it straight over the top of the wiki. So if you edit this manually, your change is going to get wiped out the very next merge into master. So one of those things that I just got annoyed managing myself, and so I hijacked it and said, okay, I'm done managing this. I'm going to start scripting it just to keep things in sync. And then my release pipelines look a little bit uglier. So there is a icon update one, and this one's actually set to kick off at midnight my time once a day. And its sole purpose in life is to go out to the Material Design Icons website and run our icon update. And if it finds changes, create a pull request with the changes into master. So hopefully I will stop running into issues now with this library falling behind when they release new icons and me not realize it or miss an update. So I figure running this once a day is probably good enough to be reasonably up to date. I think a video on GitHub would be nice. Oh yeah, Ted. Happily to go through and show it. It's actually, so the edit of the wiki, with the exception of this page, this is the only page I would say don't edit. But with most of these, for example, the Getting Started guide, if you come across with any issues or changes that you see, it's just a matter of hitting the edit button and making the appropriate changes. Everyone has write permission to the wiki. I do keep a local clone up to date, so don't worry about making changes. In the event that anything goes through that's bad, the wiki itself is actually just a Git repo. So if you wanted to clone everything locally and edit a bunch of files at once, you can do that. But again, it's a public repo. Everyone has push access, so anyone can make changes and improvements. So if you see something that you want added, go for it. I watch the changes, and as long as it's nothing horrible, I usually let any improvements people are willing to make are more than welcome. So, and just going back, so, and then the normal release pipeline, this one gets uglier. So this is one that I've been poking at and playing at for a while. So the build pipeline that kicks off on every merge to master generates artifacts. This thing's set up on a once a day schedule, and the idea being that these CI builds would get triggered once a day on the schedule, because right now AppVeyor runs on every merge into master, and that can get a little noisy for the CI NuGet packages that are coming out, especially when I'm like reviewing and pulling in a bunch of pull requests. It'll kick off a new CI package for every single one of them. So this will slow it down to basically just nightly builds per day. That way if I merge something in and maybe there's a bug with it that needs to be fixed, we don't necessarily get bad packages distributed. So I figured that would be a little bit of a help. There's a approver gate to go out to NuGet. So the idea being that this CI build ends up going into these this artifacts, which is a private NuGet feed, effectively for me to test, and then approve button out the door, and it goes out to NuGet, and then one more approver gate to actually publish the full NuGet package out to NuGet.org. These things are misleading names. It says NuGet.org right here, but right now it's tied into more private feeds on this side. Basically, I'm simulating NuGet.org with these artifacts just to make sure everything's working right. And then ultimately, I'm going to whack them and switch it to actually point to NuGet.org. So just one of those, like I said, as part of getting rid of AppVeyor and moving to DevOps, this whole kind of build stage pipeline with this type of setup, specifically being able to walk individual packages, because just because one package works its way down this line doesn't mean all three of them will necessarily go at the same rate. So we can now rev each of these individually, which will be nice. So for example, MaApps kicks out an update, we need to add some brushes, great, we can just walk something through these stages, out the door, and we're done. So once I'm confident that this is actually working the way I expect, I think this will be the next pass at making everything go. So, and then it'll actually get tied into NuGet.org rather than pointed at my private feeds, because these things I keep, every time there's an issue with it, I don't want to necessarily spam NuGet.org with my bad versioning or bugs that I've gone through. So once this is all stable and running, hopefully it should work. So this has been a fun thing for me of doing a bunch of DevOps stuff. So, and this all checks passed, great, squash and merge. This won't, be aware, the AppVeyor isn't kicking out builds for the MaApps NuGet package right now. So I will look at addressing that and getting a new preview package up for this library so that it's not broken for everybody, because it needs to affect both the colors and the MaApps packages as well. So I'll make sure that those get updated on NuGet.org in the next day or two. So those will be going, but just be aware that the stuff that's sitting out on NuGet.org right now, if you grab the latest, you are probably going to be broken. So grab a package that's earlier than, say, Sunday. So for those people who aren't in my time, something before the 7th, and you should be fine, because I think the 7th is when I was making changes. Okay, with that, I think I've reached about my 2-hour mark. Hopefully this was helpful. It made me feel better to be able to catch these bugs. Thank you guys for dropping in, and we will be planning on doing this again next week. If there are things that people are interested in seeing or examples, I think I'm probably going to potentially start in on doing some examples on WPF and MVVM next, specifically using this library, but I think next week might be a little more WPF generic rather than material design specific. So we'll see how that goes. Again, if people have other things that you want to see or examples or questions, feel free to just shoot them over to me. You can either comment on videos or something on the Gitter chat. Usually gets to me pretty quick, and we will go from there. So with that, say goodnight. Happy coding, guys, and thanks for hanging out.